I was trying so hard to hold it together, and I was trying so hard to be the perfect kid. I was just so grateful that anybody wanted to love me.
All right, well, we are hanging out today with a new country artist, Chase McDaniel.
One of my friends and just a up-and-coming superstar, man. It's an honor to have my guy Chase McDaniel in the building.
We were very poor. We lived in a little rusty old trailer. I witnessed a lot of violence. It was constantly just me trying to do math in my head of what is reality. I didn't understand that a lot of what I was seeing growing up was the consequence of drug addiction.
What did that first panic attack feel for you?
It felt like a bomb went off in my skull. I didn't know what was happening, and I was in total denial, like just total denial. And I thought, if I'm just smart enough, if I'm strong enough, I'll beat this the same way I did that stuff when I was a kid, and it'll just go away. And I was wrong. The problem was I was always trying to do it alone. I think that it's unfair that so many people don't get a second chance. Why, the night that I was standing on the side of a bridge, why did some man find me and pull me back over? This is my choice to live. I don't want to live in the hell of it. I want to live in the triumph of it.
The big silence. It's time to sing.
Welcome to the Big Silence podcast, Chase McDaniel. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course, I'm excited. I feel like you're the epitome of taking pain into purpose. And there's so much that I've learned about you where this conversation is so aligned, from mental health, music, which is also very healing for me, fitness, which has been healing for both of us. And you studied psychology.
Yeah.
And you just cover all the things that we want to talk about. And we will talk about your amazing music career and the fact that you need to get on a plane to go open up for Jason Aldean, or else get in a car right now and start driving.
Yeah.
But congrats on everything you've done and your openness and vulnerability that you talk about a lot. I kind of want to start this off. So you're from Kentucky. I'm an Indiana girl.
Okay.
So Midwest.
Yeah.
Born and raised in Peru, Indiana. I don't know if you know where that is.
I don't. You
No,
probably don't
it's
know where
very-
Greensburg, Kentucky is either. So
Yes, right. So probably the equivalent of small town. I find it so interesting that when you were younger, your family was very into fitness, and even 4, 5, 6 years old, you would end up at the gym with them.
yeah.
And coming from small town Indiana, and I assume small town Kentucky, that's not very common.
No, not at all. And there's a really interesting story behind that. So, part of my story is that my dad was an addict. And so he was very, what's the word? Like, he was very precocious as a kid. So we did strength training. That was something that my family did competitively. And so my grandpa was an Olympic lifter. My dad was a national champion power lifter. And so, when I was growing up, that was kind of, I think, the path. It was just what we all did together. And so, but once my dad got hooked, my grandparents sold everything that they owned to open up and buy a gym, thinking that if he were to have something that he was passionate about and could focus all his time on, that it would help him get clean. And it didn't, but what it did do was give me a gym to work out in at 4 years old, So I was in the gym with Mama and Papa when I was, doing back rows or bench presses, or, I started all of it, by the time I was in kindergarten. So I was always exposed to that.
Did your dad join you there? Or
I would see him every now and again. Yeah, he would, like, if I did see my dad, because he would come into the gym, and he was it was kind of crazy, like when he was sober, like when you caught him sober, he was awesome. I mean, just everybody loved him. He had this big, massive, enthusiastic personality, as a lot of addicts do. He was the life of the party. He was the color to every room that he walked in, and I admired him in so many ways because he was the cool guy. He was the guy everybody wanted to be friends with. And but yeah, when I saw him most of the time, it was at the gym or we would go fishing together. But yeah, I remember he would, his thing was he'd throw every plate in the gym on the bench press, and he'd just start repping it out, and everybody would just gather around and watch him, and I would be so, I don't know, enthralled by that, like just kind of caught my eye as a kid. I wanted to be that. I wanted to be able to stop a room with my strength. Like my dad did, be Superman. There was obviously a lot of complicated relationship with him, but there was good times in the gridiron arena.
It's so interesting too, because growing up in Indiana, my mom would work out to Jane Fonda DVD or not DVDs,
Mhm.
VHS tapes back in the day. And my dad was a runner, and I always witnessed them being active in a house that was full of chaos.
Yeah.
There was that one thing that I was like, I admired that person who was teaching workouts on a VHS tape. And I was like, one day I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I think, again, in all the chaos, to have that one healthy habit, not saying I didn't stray from it for quite some time, but you know how to come back to it too. So when did you get into music?
I was very young. So my papa was a bass singer in a gospel quartet, and he was also a pastor of a small country church. He did a lot of things. He was a jack of all trades, like many people in that generation. I mean, he was a barber, so he cut my hair. He was chief of police in our hometown before I was born, and then he was a teacher, and then later in his life, a college professor. He got his PhD at 70 years old, and I watched him do that when I was a teenager.
I'm guessing Papa's not around anymore because he would be like, boy, cut your hair.
No, he's right. He's 100% around. Yeah, got back from home last night.
Oh,
I
amazing.
try to go home as much as I can. They're 82 and 83 now.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's
No, my husband has long hair like you,
Yeah.
blonde, wavy, long hair.
Yeah.
So I love it.
yeah. I didn't grow it out until after I left home. I think probably just because my barber was always free. It was cheap. Go to the garage, get a haircut, and then I left home. I was like, dang, I can't afford a haircut anymore. I just grew it out. Honestly, I seriously just couldn't afford a haircut. That's how it started, and then after that, it just kind of became a thing.
So back to how you got introduced to music.
Yeah, so he sang, and so I kind of would travel around with him and Mamaw in this 15-passenger van when they on Sunday nights they'd go sing at these churches. Just fell in love with that like low country gospel sounds, and then I got a Josh Turner CD when I was around 6 or 7, and rode the public school bus to school. And I got kind of a funny story about that. I was probably about 6 or 7 years old when a couple kids in the back were trying to teach me that the middle finger meant great job. And
Like it means that's what it
yeah,
means.
yeah. So like, trying to teach me some sign language, and they're like, hey, this finger means great job. And if you go up and show the bus driver, tell him he's doing a great job driving a school bus, we'll let you sit back here with us. And so I did that. And of course, the issues with that is that I believed them, one, and then two is that my bus driver didn't know that it meant great job. So I never got to sit in the back of the bus with them again. I had to sit up front by my bus driver the rest of the school year, and he listened to country radio. And so for an hour and a half on the way to school and on the way home every day, because I was one of the last kids to get dropped off, I listened to the radio with my bus driver. And so I fell in love with country music. I fell in love with, bluegrass gospel. There wasn't any, I was in a dry county, and you might relate to this. I don't know how, what your town was like, but there were no alcohol, there was no bars. The only live music that we had was in the church. And so until I was driving, it was bluegrass gospel or whatever the radio was playing.
I love that. And so your relationship with your dad, and I know when you were, was it 17? He passed away?
Yeah, he OD'd, yeah.
Oh, he OD'd. Okay. Wow. That's got to be heavy.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah. And I know in a lot of your music, you share a lot of kind of the emotions that you've been through. It's almost as if your music is like a therapy session. So with your dad, what was that like? Because you have 6 other siblings.
Yeah, and they're split. So I'm the only one from my mom and my dad together. And then I have 3 half siblings on one side, 3 half siblings on the other. But, so I lived with my mom for a little bit growing up, and we were very poor. So, we lived in a little rusty old trailer, heated the house with a kitchen stove, wasn't fit to live in, didn't have a bed until I was 12 years old. Like, I mean, it was not a great situation. And then when I would see my dad, it was, I would actually go to my grandparents' house, so they were kind of, I think, acting as a buffer between me and him. And not that I didn't spend time with my dad growing up, I definitely did. I think the confusing part of it is that I was told a lot more about him than I ever saw or understood about him. He was always this mysterious guy. I just knew that he wasn't around a lot. When he was, it seemed like he didn't want to be there. He was not really in a good mood when he was around me, but he seemed to be in a good mood around other people. I didn't understand that a lot of what I was seeing growing up was, the consequence of drug addiction. I witnessed a lot of violence on his behalf growing up. And I think my grandparents were just constantly trying to protect me from that. Is that, you take a guy who was a national champion power lifter who knew how to fight, and then you mix hard drugs with that combo, and that's a nasty combination. He got in some bad situations, and I think a couple of those situations involved me, and my life might have been at stake in a couple of those deals that went down. And
Yeah.
so I think that while I might have been protected from some of it, I wasn't. Clearly, was not protected from all of it. I watched a lot of things go down that I wish I hadn't had to witness as a kid, but also I grew up in the stress of that. I grew up in the chaos of that. And then
Yeah.
when my grandparents finally just took me in and in full and raised me, I was growing up under the umbrella of their grief because they had already previously lost a son in a car accident before I was born.
Oh, wow.
And so my uncle Ricky died in a car accident, and so they had already lost one son. And so I was watching them battle the grief of losing another son while he was still here until my dad did eventually die. And so I witnessed them lose a son while they had already lost another. So they've lost two sons. I was back home yesterday, and I was looking at pictures of me and my mom and papa growing up, and you know, it's it was just such a complex situation, and I never had the words for it because I think I was just being told so many different narratives from everybody. People were trying to protect my dad. He was in and out of jail growing up, and they would tell me, he was on vacation or this, but then maybe I watched him break a guy's neck the week before that, and I'm like, well, I saw this, and so it was constantly just me trying to do math in my head of what is reality, because I think there were so many people trying to convince me that he was a good guy, that he loved me. And those things might have been true, but they're just very confusing for a child. And I'm having to kind of still put the pieces together now as an adult about some of the things that, people chose to believe, or at least chose to tell me about even his life and his death, because there were just stories that the family wanted to believe, or maybe even wanted to keep to themselves. And that was just so complex and confusing to me. But also I had to stay out of it because it ultimately, my grief was not the biggest grief, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense. And so I had to
Mhm.
put my grief on hold or on the back burner because I was, being raised by two people who had lost a son. And
Yeah.
there's a line in one of my songs. What I didn't have was, I didn't talk bad about my dad because he was still their son. And
Um, yeah.
it was all the things that I saw that I could never be honest about because I was afraid it would, hurt feelings.
I can relate to the not knowing what was truth because so much is hidden in the throughout the family. Even,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my adult life with my sister, who's older than me, going back into when my mom had her mental illness and she was schizophrenic in the home and had made up, all of her delusions she had put into my brain. So then it was like I was brainwashed, and it took
Mm,
years for me to figure
yeah.
out what was real
Yeah.
and what was not. And even I had a conversation with my cousin 3 weeks ago because he read my memoir, and he's like, I had no clue that that was going on in your house. And they still lived in Fort Wayne and Peru, Indiana, and we all hung out as families, but the conversation the honest truth conversation was never had. I was like, that's wild. But then I have to think my dad was married to my mom, just trying to cope with himself and his marriage and find her and all of the chaos of it all. It's years of just unraveling the truth and then healing from that trauma. So
Yeah.
I can relate on that a little bit there.
Yeah, and I'm not even upset about it. I'm not angry about it. I think that everyone was doing the best that they could with the situation. I think some people chose the stress that they took on, my dad being one of those people. I think, you can say that people were doing the best that they could, but sometimes they're doing the best they could with the stress that they chose. No one forced my dad to become an addict. That was something that he well, I that's a tough thing to say because I think that, as I was looking at pictures yesterday, like, my grandma and my grandpa were so happy to be holding me when I was a kid. I couldn't help but see like just the absolute sheer joy on their faces when that I existed. And I was like, wow, that's what it must look like and feel like to be a parent. I didn't feel that with my dad. It seemed like there was a look of, oh shit, I'm a dad. How do I run from this? How do I get away from this? And it might have been one of those things where, it was a rebellion from fatherhood. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Does addiction run in your family?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, it did with with my dad. I know that mental health and mental illness runs deep, deep, deep in my family, and I'm still learning more about that. I learned just a couple years ago that my great grandfather shot himself and died, and so there's been multiple suicides. There's been multiple people who drank themselves to death, who overdosed, and I learned about that to this day because again, like here we are on your podcast called The Big Silence. It is things that we
Don't talk about.
decidedly kept silent.
It's so interesting with generational trauma too. And my grandfather, my mom's dad, died by suicide when my mom was 18. She never worked through that trauma. And I always thought with the mental illness that runs in my family, I was just kind of fucking my life off for like a decade and saying, this is going to be me. This is going to be me. And then you have that moment, you're like, wait a second, this doesn't have to be me.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible how I just, you can make that choice. I don't have to live this life. I don't have to live as the victim. And then, through therapy and fitness and all the things to be able to do something great and again, turn your pain into purpose like you have. So I'm happy that for me, schizophrenia skipped a generation.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now, well, and also you must be so grateful to have wonderful grandparents.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it almost seems like they were your savior to have that like
Yeah.
rock in your life.
Yeah. They truly tried so hard and I think and they succeeded. I genuinely do think that they were so happy that I was alive, if that makes any I think that they were navigating tragedy. And I had heard, my uncle say before, he was like, I hadn't seen your papaw, his dad, but I hadn't seen your papaw smile since Ricky died. And he said, when you came around, he just lit up. And so I do think that, at least in part, like I think that we saved each other in a lot of ways. They didn't anticipate, my dad, kind of the end of his life being the way that I think they were all expecting him to just take off and soar. I mean, he was a smart guy. He was just awesome to be around when he was sober that I knew of. And they would tell me stories of him when he was a kid. He was just destined to be a rocket ship. Like whatever he was going to do, he was going to be the best at it. He was going to, go play pro football, or he was going to go break these records and just become the best at whatever he did. And then just all of a sudden life came crashing down when they found out that he got hooked. And, first it was cocaine, and then it was heroin, and then it was other stuff on top of that. And so by the time that he died, I mean, he had 4 different things in his system that you don't mix. And so I think that they were just navigating tragedy, one from an accident, and then one from one that was ongoing for 17 years. They watched him just destruct, and so I think I held a lot of pressure, because I was trying so hard to hold it together, and I was trying so hard to be the perfect kid. I didn't feel like I deserved anything. I think when you grow up with parents or a parent who doesn't want you in some capacity, it leaves such a mark on your self-worth and what you think about yourself. And so I was just so grateful that anybody wanted to love me or take care of me or feed me or whatever. And so, I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect or be the best. And, and so when I got older, I was like, I'm going to show my dad up. I'm going to be the best at this weightlifting thing. I'm going to break all of his records. I'm going to become the best. And then he'll, either, want something to do with me or at least respect me or whatever. And so after kind of in high school, I won a state championship, won a national title. I won the pound for pound belt in the state. And go to college, I'm doing Olympic weightlifting for the University of Louisville. And the first year I passed out the top of a clean and jerk, hit my head, woke up in a CAT scan machine, didn't know who I was.
I've heard that story. So
Yeah.
Why do you think you passed out, number one?
I don't know. Yeah, to this day, I don't know. It could have been a breath thing, could have been a blood pressure drop. I have no idea. What I do know is that I was pushing myself to my limits all the time. I was training, sometimes 3 times a day, twice a day for sure.
You were lifting, what were you lifting? Like
It was-
250, 300?
It was a little over 300. Yeah, I think it was 100 and I honestly don't. It could be it was 130 kilos, I believe, 135, 100 and something like that kilos. I don't know what the transfer or the conversion is anymore. I used to be able to do it off the top of my head, but passed out and hit the deck and hit my head. The weight came down on top of me, and that ended my career because I tried to go back, a couple weeks later not understanding like how severe my concussion was, not understanding how severe my neck injury was, and it felt like a bomb went off in my skull, and I had a panic attack. I didn't know that it was a panic attack. I never had a panic attack before, but then I freaked out,
Mhm.
and
Let's talk about that. What did that first panic attack feel for you? Because, and I do want to talk more about men's mental health, because I even recently, with some stuff going on with my husband's father, Bobby is his name, is telling me symptoms and like, this is a panic attack.
mm.
He's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. I'm like, okay.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know what it was. To be honest, I knew that my mom had panic attacks growing up. I watched her and through a couple of them, and to be honest, like I had a very very poor man's misconception of mental health. I truly did. I had severe OCD as a child. When I was a kid, I would have these horrible intrusive thoughts. I'd go to a closet, I'd pray 300 times a day, and that lasted for several years. But I somehow it just stopped. Whether it was sports or whatever, and just keeping busy. A few years of that, and it kind of went away. But I don't know that I ever had a full on nervous system hijacking symptom of a panic attack. And that first time I went to back to the gym, I just knew that I was really scared and I thought I was going to die. I cried and I went back home into my bed. Now, it didn't really bother me as much as the later ones did because that one I associated with the gym.
Mhm.
Okay, if I just don't do that, it won't happen again.
So if you don't go to the gym, which you loved being at, it won't happen. So you just avoid it.
Yeah, and I didn't go back. I didn't do it again. And so I avoided the gym, but then I had a panic attack probably 6 months later. I remember what I remember was like all of my life had changed, like just so dramatically within a year. My dad had died. My grandparents were just absolutely overwhelmed with grief. I just could not seem to like get a hold of anybody in terms of like truly connecting. I went off to college, and so I was in a new town, isolated by myself. Didn't have any friends there. I'm trying to do this weightlifting thing, and then I had the concussion. Went through a breakup. I was just like no lifelines, like no one to talk to. And then so I remember my dorm room, or might have been, I guess I was living in an apartment. It just felt like it was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, like as every day went by. And then one day I just looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize who I was looking at. And I had what I guess would be my true like first panic attack. And it lasted for hours. I didn't know what was happening. I went to the hospital and they gave me some medicine to take my heart rate down because I think it was like 200 or something crazy. They were trying to explain to me what happened, and I was in total denial, like just total denial. Like, oh, it was because I did this. It was because I was doing this, and that. And I thought, well, if I'm just smart enough, if I'm strong enough, I'll beat this the same way I did that stuff when I was a kid, and it'll just go away. And I was wrong. I was very wrong. It took over my life entirely. It happened again the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day until it was constant 24/7
Wow.
for years.
Yeah. That's scary. What was the point where you're like, I have to get down to why this is happening, what's triggering it, and what my tools are going to be to not keep having this happen?
I was always trying to figure it out, but the problem was I was always trying to do it alone. I was so convinced that if I were to talk openly about this to somebody, that it would destroy my reputation, that someone would think I was crazy. Because I thought that maybe I did have something like schizophrenia. I thought maybe that I did have something that would be a form of psychosis. And I think that I did have a lot of symptoms that were in that realm. I mean, I was really, really, really far gone for a long time. And I think the brain does a good job of like blocking those things out, voices and hallucinations and just like total hijacking of my brain, like where it just was it was no longer based in reality. Probably what separated me from what your mom might have experienced was just the fact that I had agency. The fact that I at least had some idea of what was going on, and I could never know since I don't. That wasn't my official diagnosis. If that is how someone who deals with schizophrenia feels, but the fact that I knew something was wrong at all might have been what separated me from a diagnosis like that.
I think in the beginning, my mom didn't know, but then she got the diagnosis and she was on meds, but then didn't want to take the meds. And then later in life, she was homeless and all the things and was always looking for mom.
Yeah.
She didn't want to take meds. And she's like, I do have schizophrenia, but I don't want to take meds because she was an artist and it lost her creativity. But she's like, I now know how to decipher what's real
Yeah.
and what's not.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'll see a Grim Reaper over there, but she's like, I know that's not real. She's like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and see a huge spider on the ceiling, but I know it's not real. And I'm like, wow, that is just wild.
Yeah, and that's so interesting to me because I would have the same kind of experiences, but it would be there would be such a small part of my brain that would go, you cannot admit to yourself that that's real. If that makes any sense. There was a part of me that was able to make the distinction somehow. Even if it was just a doubt, I think. Like, if I did see something like that, it was just there was enough of doubt in me that would like allowed me to get back into a place of, a mutual reality.
I know the brain is so interesting. Actually, today on the podcast, I don't know if you've heard of Kevin Hines, because this month is Suicide Awareness Month too. And so I've had these very heavy conversations, and Kevin Hines is one of the very few survivors who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge.
I think I didn't know the name, but I think I've heard the story. Yeah.
Yeah. You've definitely heard the story. He's on the podcast today. But when I was in New York and I was recording 2 weeks ago, and he had his wife there, and I found it so beautiful, and because he still suffers, but his wife is such a great partner for him because he will go to her and be like, is there a man standing there who wants to stab me? And she's like, no, dear.
Yeah.
I'm like, blessed be to your wife. And it's, and that's also the beauty when you do have a lot of mental health issues, whatever is going on, to still believe and trust in yourself to be able to find love as well. And I know even with my trauma growing up and learning how to love again, was a process as well. And, now I've been married 10 years, but what about you and trust and love and all of that? What's your journey been like?
That's a great question. I'm on that journey right now. So I had a high school sweetheart, which was really my first journey with that. And I dated this, awesome young lady for, I think, 3 years. And she was just super smart and like won all the awards and stuff. And I just remember being like, well, if she likes me, then I must be awesome. And I think I was in love with the idea of me being awesome and being liked by someone who I thought was awesome. And so, we really, enjoyed each other. And then, we broke up when I was in college, and I dated. I think throughout my battle with, mental health, I also dealt with, substance abuse, whether it be alcohol or prescriptions, and mostly with alcohol. And it was because it was like, I think anxiety was so overwhelming to me but when you're drinking, you feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof. It was like the one time for like a couple hours I didn't have to feel afraid or feel like my body was hijacking me or my brain was. But then the next day it will be worse. The original anxiety will be worse. So I think during that time after, we broke up, and I really, obviously all the other things happened, losing my dad, the concussion, all of those things were far more contributing. The spiral took place where, I was suicidal for so long. And that started early. So the suicidality part started when I was a kid because I had such intrusive thoughts that were related to OCD. And it was probably more of a PTSD response because of the violence that I saw through my dad. But I would, I watched these horrible things happen, and then these images would get stuck in my head, these really violent or graphic images. And so just on repeat, I would just, imagine a stabbing or a murdering or something. And so that would be on my head and repeat. And then that gets stuck in your head for long enough. As a child, you start to take ownership of those thoughts and think that maybe they belong to you in some way, or that you take identity with those thoughts. And so as a child, as 10 or 11 years old, I had convinced myself that I was destined to grow up and become a serial killer because of the thoughts that I was having. And so I would go to a closet and pray, please God, take these thoughts away from me. That didn't help. It just made it worse because I was fighting it. But I had then convinced myself, well, it's better for me to take my own life first before I'm able to grow up into this monster who is able to hurt anybody else. Because I never wanted to hurt anybody else. Like that, I was just, I just wanted to be kind and loving, but my mind would not allow me to believe that I was those things.
Mhm.
And so, when I got sick again in my 20s, and this time it was much more, DPDR related, panic disorder, and there was some OCD involved and all that too. I think I went straight to suicide again. Like it was just like, this is an escape. Um, and so my dating life was severely affected because one, with the panic attacks, I would just have such a hard time going out and meeting anybody. Like
Yeah.
imagine trying to be vulnerable with somebody and being open with this massive wall between you. Like imagine going on a date, having a full blown panic attack and pretending as if you are totally cool, calm, and collected. That was my everyday
Mhm.
life. And
Yeah.
so when you live like that, it becomes normal. But then you have to learn to make yourself perceived in a way that those aren't you don't have those problems because you still want to be loved, you still want to be, to be able to participate and be a human, but you have all of this baggage, you have all of these things in your way. And so I think for a long time, and this is being really really vulnerable for me, I would just, you know stay the night with somebody or have them stay the night with me, thinking that if even if it's a complete stranger, if they're around me, there's someone here, I can't take my life with someone being here. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Um,
Oh,
and there's no telling how
did
many.
they
Sorry, go.
yeah, they didn't even know that they were actually protecting you
No idea.
in that moment.
No
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, and I hate that because there's no telling how many people I hurt, in that era of my life, but I was so on guard, I couldn't open up to anybody or, I definitely don't think I told any of them what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
But they were a buffer again to just like if someone's here, if someone's in the room, or if, I can't do that.
What would you say to someone listening just if they have suicidal ideation?
I think it depends. I think every situation's different. I think I know why I was thinking about it. For me it was that I had dealt with the same pain for way too long. It wasn't getting any better. Uh,
Yeah.
and it felt like I had lost control of my mind, and I didn't think I could get it back. My brain had felt so sick that I thought it would never feel normal again. I think a lot of times people consider suicide or attempt suicide for two reasons, and one is because they want the way that they feel to change, and it's not, or they want their circumstances to change and they're not. It's not usually because you actually want to die. I
Mhm.
never wanted to die. I just thought it was a solution to my problem. It was an escape for the misery that I had experienced for far too long that I didn't see a way out of. I think it definitely depends on the circumstance. I think a general thing that I would say is imagine imagine a version of you, however far down the line you have to go for it to make any sense, that no longer feels like this and no longer has this set of circumstances. Not because you're dead, but because you overcame it,
Mhm.
because you won, you beat it.
Yeah.
And what does that person feel like? What do the people in their life look like? Like how loved does that person feel? Because when you're in that space, it's like you don't have access to feeling love for yourself. You don't have access to feeling the love of those around you. Like imagine what you could do with all of that love, all of that untapped potential that you can't even see yet. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know that feeling. I was 13 and I survived, and I'm so happy to be here and learn what actually and experience what actually living is,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and learning to love yourself and learning that you can be loved. And going back to you and you learning to love for not as needing a protector in your bedroom, but
Yeah.
to actually love. Have you gotten there yet?
Yeah,
You said you're in.
yeah, I've been it's so interesting. I've been seeing somebody for a while now, a long time actually. We met at the bar that I worked at during COVID, and it's just been such a slow growth for me. I think for her, it was probably like a boom, fireworks in the beginning kind of thing, and for me, it was a softening that happened because there
Yeah.
were so many layers of just destruction that I had to overcome in order to allow myself to live again, in order to allow myself to love again, to be loved. I'm so grateful that she doesn't have to know what that's like, but it probably, it had to have taken somebody like her in order to have the patience and have the kindness and have the ability to get through all of that, you know?
Very special to find someone who can understand you in all of your darkest moments and just support you and stand by you.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's probably
so
it's honestly necessary. Like,
yeah.
and I think that you take a big step of bravery. Like it's courageous to allow yourself to be loved and to love. It is. It's an act of courage to love somebody because there's two ways it goes, and if it doesn't go good, that hurts like hell, and everyone knows that. And so, but when you find somebody who can help you regulate your nervous system, who can help
Mhm.
you battle the demons in your head, even if they don't understand them. You know what I mean? I think we have this obsession sometimes of feeling understood. Sometimes being understood is a drug that's not good because then you have
Yeah.
two people that understand each other a little too much that can go kinda haywire. I
Yeah.
kinda am enjoying not being not understood, but being supported in almost
Yeah.
everything, you know?
I I can relate to that too because I do still have panic attacks here and there, and I know what they are now. And I'll just say to Bobby, I'm like, I'm having a panic attack right now
Yeah.
because he'll notice like something changes in me.
There's a shift, yeah.
And sometimes I even had one this morning, but then I realized it almost was like a positive anxiety
Hmm.
because some,
Excitement.
but I'll just yeah.
Sure.
But with Bobby, I'll be like, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. I just need to lay down and breathe. Or for me, it's meditation or going into a cold plunge or cold water helps me shift my thoughts and I can only focus on my breath and it'll bring me right out of it. And I tell him, I'm like, you don't have to ask any questions. You don't have to try to relate.
Yeah.
Just I'm letting you know this is how I'm feeling. He's like, okay.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's something special, and I don't know what it is, but, I struggled with my faith for a very, very, very long time. I didn't believe anything for easily a decade, and, really over the process of making this album, I have had a shift in perspective. I think of the life that I've lived. I think that it's unfair that so many people don't get a second chance. You ask yourself, "Well, why?" The night that I was standing on the side of a bridge, why did some man find me and pull me back over?
Mhm.
And for somebody else, that didn't happen. In my case, there was. And in my case, there seemed to have been the right circumstance or the right person in my life for the situation that I was in to carry me to the next step. And I think over the process of making this album, I've come to understand that that's something bigger than me that I can't understand.
Yeah, let's talk about your album,
Yeah.
Lost Ones. So, it's out already.
Yeah.
It came out
Yeah.
September 19th, I think.
Yep.
How does that feel? Number 1, did you have an anxiety attack?
I've had several. I've had several panic attacks, but they're different now. When you have panic attacks and you don't know what they are, and you have no, sense of agency over what's happening or any kind of go-to methods to help ease the fear. Now it's like I know what's happening. It's like there's
Yeah.
so many things that I can go to, or I can catch it early. Every now and again, I get swept, but I haven't had that happen in about a year. I got swept pretty hard about a year ago, but I'm back in a pretty good space. The
Yeah.
album coming out, man, it was just emotionally charged. And
Yeah.
I think something that I've learned with my anxiety particularly is that I thought I was a psychopath until I was in my 20s. I never felt anything. And I thought, I know this sounds crazy, but I thought emotions were something that people felt in movies. and and I think that was because as a kid, I had experienced some really hurtful things. I had made the subconscious decision at very young to become numb to a lot of
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and really it wasn't that I was numb, it's that I was repressing and pushing down all of my emotions. And so that is my default with everything. If I feel
Mhm.
something very strongly, I'm just like, "Oh, put it in the back, I'll deal with it later." And then something really bad happens, and then now you have a mental disorder.
Yeah. Well, that's what so with your album coming out
Yeah.
and panic attacks, but that would almost be what I would when I was in my mind this morning. I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Because it's not something I'm talking about publicly yet,
Yeah.
but it's something that I've been working really hard on and dreamt of, and then you get it, kind of like
Yeah.
everything that then you're like,
Yeah.
holy shit, what did I do?
Yeah. Exactly.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
Am I worthy?
It's learning to manage. For me, it's been learning to manage those really powerful emotions. And sometimes those emotions are good ones. But I've spent all of my life numbing every emotion, that even the good ones sometimes are scary to let myself feel, and it turns into panic. The album releasing, I think, was probably one of the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me, but I still felt so much panic. I felt so much panic. But
Lord help us.
it has been such a relief, honestly, to get it out into the world, because so much of it is my lived experience. So much of it is what I've learned about the life that I've lived, the things that I've overcome, the things that I think are shifts in my perspective that could help someone else going through hell.
Yeah.
And, I was desperate to get that out into the world before I died. And I think that was where a lot of the anxiety came from, because when you have a panic attack, it feels like imminent death. Oh, I'm going to die right now. There's nothing I can do.
Oh yeah.
And the
Oh,
fear
yeah.
is not that I'm going to die, it's that I'm going to die like this. And in my circumstance, my like this was, I'm going to die and my album's not going to be out yet. you know?
You're like, I need my legacy out.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I need this, what I've come to understand, this is my purpose now. This is my choice to live. This is, the night that I got back pulled over the bridge. This is what this is all about. And if this doesn't make it out, that's a problem with me,
Yeah.
And so I've been trying really hard to live. I've been eating healthy, all the good stuff this year to get this album out.
So what was your writing process, and how long did it take?
Oh, a long time. Well, first I had to decide. I had to go through the process of deciding that I was going to write about my life. I don't know that I always knew or planned on doing that.
Was it more like, did you approach it more of like a therapy session?
Not
Like
really.
putting it down on
Yeah.
paper and writing?
Not really. Yes and no. I think the therapy sessions for me, because I still have such a hard time being truly vulnerable with other people. That happens alone for me. Like, so if I get a song idea, I'll write out a lot of it, in my room at night. And then if I go to the studio with a couple of guys to co-write, like I need the room to be just laughing and fun and everybody's making butt jokes or whatever. Like, because I think for me it was chasing the art of the poetry, chasing the art of the message, and then not allowing the studio room to be so heavy.
Yeah.
Because those guys, they likely know my story on paper. If anything else, it wouldn't do me any good to be sitting there crying about some of the stuff that's happened, because that's not where I want to live anymore. I don't want to live in the hell of it. I want to live in the triumph of it. So if we
I love
can
that.
if we can make jokes about, some of the shit, sometimes that's how you survive. I have a very dark sense of humor. What I do outside of music is like I go to stand-up comedy shows. I'm like always watching comedy stuff. I could never do it myself, but that's kind of how I decompress. And so when I'm hanging out with the guys or whatever, it's like it's fun. It's funny. It's hilarious.
I like that. I think that's very important to point out. I mean, I love to laugh. Laughing is medicine. And even now, when I tell stories of my past with friends or husband, I actually can laugh about it. I'm like, I can't fucking believe I'm alive. What the hell was I thinking? Like, it's wild. So it's good to now we're here. We're here. We can laugh at our mistakes. We won't do them again, but not living in that victim fearful past.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what's your favorite song on your album?
Oh, I don't know. I have so
You probably
many.
hate that question.
Well, just for different reasons. I mean, they're all. I think that I didn't write any particular song to stand on its own, likely other than What I Didn't Have. What I Didn't Have was a song I wrote specifically for my grandparents and the complexity of our relationship, and also the celebration of our relationship. As you said, they saved me. And
Yeah.
that is something that I believe, and I will carry to my grave, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. They are just incredible human beings, and they are both my heroes for so many different reasons. They represent something that really is the essence of what makes life pursuable for me, like the pursuit of happiness and the pursuit of like finishing the story. I see that in my grandparents, that you can have tragedy occur in your life and somehow find beauty again. on the other side of it. I've seen that with them.
True.
It's evident in their lives, and they were good to me even in the midst of all of their tragedies. They still loved me and prayed for me and did whatever they could to, make my life easier, which is just crazy to me. Um,
What's the song title of the one about your
it's
grandparents?
called What I Didn't Have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
song was like, it was a 11th hour song because I had the album written and I texted Scott Borchetta the day before we going in to cut the vocals. And I was like, hey, I just finished this song and I think this has to be on the record. Can we replace one of the others? And he was kind of hesitant about it. And I was like, look, Mama and Papa are 82, 83 years old and I have to get this out. Like, cause I don't know how long it's going to take to get album 2 done. We know it took 3 years to get this one done. I don't know how much longer they got. I need them to know what they mean to me and this song. And he gave me the honor of cutting it. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are all of your songs written about real life experiences or people? Like, and before I let you go, is that an actual story of something that happened?
yeah, that's my letter to my dad, or my letter
Okay.
to myself about my dad. I think they all hold some kind of truth or
Some story, like in Lost Ones, I know it's about a brother who's lost a brother by suicide and also has a letter.